Bitcoin isn't just digital gold. It's an entire ecosystem powering the future of money. But how does it work? Who keeps a Bitcoin network running? And what drives Bitcoin's innovation? In this video, I'm going to break down Bitcoin's entire ecosystem, and I'm going to explain it to you in simple words so that anyone can understand it. From the miners that verify transactions on the network, to nodes that keep it decentralized, to the Lightning Network that revolutionizes transactions, and even the exciting world of Ordinals that spark creativity on the blockchain. So whether you're deep into crypto or you're just starting your journey, this video is going to be your ultimate guide to understanding the entire Bitcoin ecosystem. And if you enjoy watching videos like this one, where I break down complex topics in the world of investing, finance, and crypto, then make sure to smash the like button and subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so yet, because I'm going to be posting regular videos just like this one to help you to understand what is going on in this space. And my goal is to help as many of you to cross the finish line this bull market cycle. And if not this bull market cycle, then the next one. I will be around. But my goal is to help you to be informed and to help you to position yourself for maximum gains. Now let's dive in. Bitcoin's entire ecosystem explained. We're going to cover miners, nodes, Lightning Network, and Ordinals, and a lot more. So recently, Michael Saylor, the CEO of MicroStrategy, went on stage at Bitcoin 2024 and he gave a bold price prediction of what he believes Bitcoin could do in the next 21 years. And he gave 3 different scenarios: a bear case, a base case, and a bull case. Basically, in other words, worst case, medium case, or most likely case, and the best case scenario. According to Michael Saylor, within the next 21 years, Bitcoin in the worst case could grow to $3 million per coin. In the base case, so the medium case, he believes it can go to $13 million per coin. And in the best possible scenario, $49 million per coin. That's a huge, insane, bold price prediction. But if you really understand what's underneath Bitcoin's hood, which we're going to uncover in this video, then you start to realize that actually it might be possible, because it's really one of the strongest and most secure networks that we have available right now. So let's dive in. Bitcoin has been named the best performing asset of the past decade. And with the past decade, we mean 2010 up to 2020. Within that time frame, it generated on average 230% returns per year, so annualized returns, which is really amazing, especially when you compare it to traditional investments like stocks, crypto. Sorry, not crypto. We're of course talking about crypto, but if you compare it to traditional investments like stocks, bonds, real estate, even watches, then it's really good. If you compare it to the Nasdaq 100, which are the top 100 companies listed on the Nasdaq, then it outperformed those stocks, or that basket of stocks, with a factor of 10, which is insane. So I pulled up this chart, which is the number of transactions per day on Bitcoin. And the maximum time frame that I was able to get for this chart was 5 years. Now, what can we see on this chart? Well, we can see that in 2020 and 2021, which was around the previous bull market, we saw a higher number of transactions than in the years after that, 2020, 2023. And that makes sense. Normally during a bull market, there are more transactions than in a bear market. Why? Because during a bull market, everyone wants to get their hands on some Bitcoin. So there's more transactions happening on the network. And during a bear market, people are mostly waiting for prices to go back up again. But the nice thing I like about this chart is that in this bull market cycle, we see that the number of transactions are much higher than the previous bull market. And that's exactly what we want to see. We see that over time, the number of transactions happening on a network can grow. That means there is a good growth potential, or at least this data is showing that there's a good growth potential. Right now, there's around 441,000 daily transactions happening on the Bitcoin blockchain, which is really nice. When we look here at this chart, which is the number of addresses, we see another really interesting insight. If you look at the black line, which is the price of Bitcoin, you see that the price of Bitcoin goes up over time. Of course, on the short term, it goes up It can go down. On the short term, it's very volatile, but when you zoom out, the trend is up. And the same is true for the number of Bitcoin wallets. So now you see that from 2008, 9, 2010, the number of Bitcoin wallets really started to increase a lot, all the way up till now, where there's around 1.3 billion Bitcoin addresses, which is a very big number. And if you consider that there's around, I believe, 8 billion people in the world, that's a lot of wallets. But here's an important note to make. Not these number of wallets don't mean number of users or individuals, because I, for example, have multiple wallets. I think I have around 20 Bitcoin wallets. I know some people have more, others have less, but people tend to have multiple wallets, wallets on exchanges, hardware wallets, backup wallets, you name it. But the fact that this number keeps on increasing over time means that people are still interested in entering the market or accumulating more. So that's another really great sign that the Bitcoin ecosystem is growing in terms of adoption. Now, when we talk about Bitcoin blockchain, what do we exactly mean with blockchain? Well, let me explain it to you in simple words so that anyone can understand it. And the analogy that I'm going to use is your bank account. If you have a bank account and you want to send money to someone else's bank account, two things happen. Number one, money gets deducted from your bank account and it gets added to someone else's bank account. And secondly, you pay the bank a transaction fee for processing that transaction. It's that simple. Now, when you are doing a transaction on the blockchain, on the Bitcoin blockchain, the same two things happen. Number one, Bitcoin gets deducted from your wallet and it gets added to someone else's wallet. And number two, you pay a transaction fee to the Bitcoin network. But who is the Bitcoin network? We're going to discuss that in a little bit. But first we need to discuss, why did Bitcoin actually get invented? Well, whenever you take a critical look at the banking system, you realize that these institutions that we once created to entrust our money or our gold or our valuables, they have been put in a place where they have a lot of power. Right now, you cannot easily look in the books of a bank. You cannot look what kind of transactions have happened. They have a lot of control, and oftentimes they can cook the books or they can cover up certain transactions. But in reality, within the financial industry, there's a lot of high performers that just want to get big fat paychecks at no matter what cost. So what we see is that, for example, banks get involved in stuff like this. So TD Bank gets hit with a record $3 billion fine over drug cartel money laundering. Here in 2008, this article that Lehman Brothers went bankrupt. So how is it possible that banks, these institutions that are holding our money, and nowadays, you even need to beg the banks, if you can please do a transaction to a foreign bank account. No, you cannot do that. They'll reply, you need to give us invoices and all of these documents to prove that this is a real legitimate transaction. But in the back end, they're taking very big risks by laundering money from drug cartels. And this is not the only case. There are many cases. If you type in bank fine money laundering or bank involved in drug cartels, you'll find tons of news articles out there. And what happened in 2008 is that banks or bank executives, because they wanted to earn big fat bonuses, they took excessive risks gambling on within the financial markets. In 2008, it all had to do with mortgages and derivatives from mortgages and derivatives from derivatives. And in the end, they built a whole house of cards which collapsed. But banks are there to provide safety and security for their clients. Yet, that's not really what they're doing. So these large institutions, people are slowly losing faith in them over time. Also, we see banks going bankrupt, not only in 2008, but we see banks actually go bankrupt every single year. It's a real thing. So these banks aren't that safe, they aren't that trustworthy, and there's a lot of fraud and corruption in the system. And that's why Bitcoin was created in 2008 by Satoshi Nakamoto. Around that time, he published the Bitcoin white paper, which you can find by going on the internet, type Bitcoin white paper, and you'll find many different copies that you can download for free. In the Bitcoin white paper, Satoshi Nakamoto explains the concept of Bitcoin, which is a peer-to-peer electronic cash system, meaning that you don't need any intermediaries in order to transact on the network. If you want to do a transaction through the banking system, you are at the mercy of the banks. Basically, they can decline your transaction. They can even freeze your bank account. And what we saw recently is that banks can sometimes be weaponized in order to suppress certain opinions or certain people. For example, in politics, people can be debanked when they don't have the right opinion, or when they're sharing something in the media which is not in favor with the establishment. So they basically just freeze your bank account or cancel your bank account or don't allow you to do any more transactions. So there's a lot of censorship happening right now. The banks are becoming more controlling, the governments are becoming more controlling, and Bitcoin was created as this system where people gain back the control over their own financial situation by really owning the asset and by freely being able to transact on the network. So Bitcoin, if you compare it to the banking system, Bitcoin is a decentralized technology. So let's first talk about a centralized technology. That's the image on the left. So with a centralized system or centralized technology, let's call it a centralized system, there's one or a few key decision makers which are holding most of the power. Many banks are publicly traded, meaning they have shareholders, and their goal is to maximize the value for the shareholders. That's what a management team of a bank is supposed to do. But in reality, there is an incentive system for this management team to take big risks, to take, in order to get a lot of revenue, profits for the bank, but not really considering the long-term effects of those actions. They just want to make money right now, because if the bank goes bust, then they just get a separate job somewhere else and they get a nice big fat paycheck again. So that's a system where you're dependent on entities that you must trust to do the right thing. And oftentimes they don't do the right thing. So a decentralized system is where there's no centralized authority, but there's many different decentralized players in the ecosystem which work together in order to achieve a certain goal. Decisions are made together, improvements are made together. It's basically operating like a community, like a true democracy almost, where everyone can participate. And the whole idea of the Bitcoin blockchain is the following. Why is it called a blockchain? Well, we explained earlier that whenever you're doing a transaction through the bank, two things happen. Money gets deducted from your bank account, gets added to someone else's bank account. And number two, you pay a transaction fee to the Bitcoin network for processing that. Or sorry, to the bank for processing your transaction. Whenever you're doing a transaction on the Bitcoin blockchain, your transaction gets added to a large block of transactions, hence the name blockchain, blocks of transactions. And these blocks of transactions are processed by the miners. Who are the miners? Let me show you. Here's a picture of me in one of our mining farms. It was one of our first mining farms in Kazakhstan. We had 20,000 machines. And when I talk about miners, I mean these machines. So these machines are basically the banking system of Bitcoin. And anyone can buy one of these machines and participate on the network and earn Bitcoin. So right now we're managing 80,000 Bitcoin mining machines. Our most recent farm is in Ethiopia. And we're not the only ones mining Bitcoin. There are hundreds of thousands of Bitcoin mining machines all around the world working together in order to process those transactions. And in return, they earn a reward, and that reward is in Bitcoin. So they earn a nice commission for doing that. So when I realized that instead of paying the bank a transaction fee for all of the transactions I'm doing through the banking network, I could become the bank, the Bitcoin banking system, and earn a transaction fee for all the transactions happening on the network. So the moment that I realized I could become part of the banking system, I could contribute it to it, and I could make a living from it, that's the moment I realized I wanted to go all in. And that's why right now my main company is Epic Mining, and that's 100% focused on Bitcoin mining and helping people to get started with Bitcoin mining. So if you want to know more about that, check out the link in the comments below. But let's continue. So how do these Bitcoin miners earn fees. How does it work? Well, whenever you do a transaction on a network, your transaction gets added to a large block of transactions, hence the name blockchain, which we explained earlier. And when the miners process a block of transactions, they earn a block reward. What is a block reward? In 2009, when Bitcoin was just released, the block reward was at 50 Bitcoin per block of transactions. So if a miner or group of miners processed a block of transactions, they would receive 50 Bitcoin. And then we have something called the Bitcoin halvings. I'm pretty sure you've heard about this term, but you may or may not know exactly what it means. But anyways, I'm going to explain it to you. Every 4 years, the block reward gets halved, meaning that after processing one block of transactions, the number of Bitcoin that gets released to the miners gets halved. So in 2009, it was 50 Bitcoin. 4 years later, it went to 25 Bitcoin per block of transactions. Then 4 years later, it went to 12.5 Bitcoin per block of transactions. Then 4 years later, it went to 6.25 Bitcoin per block of transactions. And recently in April, we had another Bitcoin halving. And then after that moment, the block rewards got halved again to 3.1 Bitcoin per block of transactions. Now you might look at this image and you might think 50 Bitcoin, that's so much. But back at that time, 15 years ago, Bitcoin was basically worthless. 50 Bitcoin with an average price of around $1 per Bitcoin would be just $50. Right now, we earn 3 Bitcoin per block of transactions, but Bitcoin is over 100K. So meaning that we earn more than $300,000 per block of transactions, which gets released to miners in Bitcoin, which is insane. And then one question that I always get is Bitcoin mining still profitable if the block rewards get halved every 4 years? And the reason why Bitcoin mining is still profitable after 15 years is because it doesn't matter if the block rewards get halved. So if my machines produce half the amount of Bitcoin, as long as the price of Bitcoin goes up with 2, 3, 4, 5 times, then it's still profitable. We're up almost 2 times since the Bitcoin halving, and we're still early in this bull market cycle. So I'm still good. So no worries. And that's the reason why Bitcoin mining is still profitable. So let's talk a little bit more about mining, because when you see all of these machines, it is no longer possible to just buy one machine to plug it into your electricity, at home and to mine Bitcoin. Why? Because your single machine is not powerful enough anymore to process transactions on the network. Here behind me, you see hundreds of machines. We have 80,000 machines. And worldwide, there's hundreds of thousands of machines. And those machines work together in something that we call mining pools. So mining pools are collectives of Bitcoin miners which work together to process transactions on the network. And by working together, they have a higher likelihood of processing these blocks of transactions much faster and earning the rewards. So there's 4 or 5 different mining pools out there which dominate the market. And together they're mining all of these blocks of transactions. So how all of that works is those machines are connected together through code, through these mining pools. And together their computing power gets bundled together. So they're together much stronger in processing these transactions. And then proportional to the computing power that your machines are contributing to the mining pool, you receive a reward. So proportional to the computing power, you will earn Bitcoin, and that will go directly to your wallet. So this is how Bitcoin miners work. Now, next to miners, and miners are a very specific kind of node. You've got miner nodes, but you also have 2 other nodes. So what are those 2 other nodes? Well, those 2 other nodes that I'm referring to are full nodes and light nodes. Whenever miners process transactions on the network, basically they process all these transactions and wallets need to be updated. So when I send Bitcoin from one wallet to another wallet, then money gets deducted from my wallet and it gets added to your wallet, and this needs to get updated. And those updates are sent to the nodes. What are nodes? Nodes are basically storage devices which are storing the transaction history of Bitcoin. And you have 2 varieties of those. You have the full nodes, which store all of the transaction history all the way up to the inception of Bitcoin, the Genesis block. So they contain all of the transactions. And you have a light node. A light node only contains the most recent version of the blockchain. For example, whenever you're opening your wallet on your phone, you only want to know how much Bitcoin is in your wallet right now. Maybe you don't even care about the whole transaction history. You just want to know what's in your wallet right now. So that's an example of a light node. Now, how can anyone have a node, or how can you create a node? Well, this device, you can buy it. It's a Raspberry Pi. It's a very simple device. Here you see it on my screen. You can connect it to a 1 terahash or 5 terahash, it's not terahash, terabyte or 1 terabyte hard drive, depending whether you want to have a full node, light node, or whatever you want to do with it. And you can simply install a script on it. You can connect it to the internet, and then it can actually store all of the information or all of the transactions on the Bitcoin network. So if you want to destroy Bitcoin, then what you need to do is, at the same time, you need to destroy all of the nodes. So you need to find all of these devices and simultaneously destroy every single copy of them. That would erase the entire Bitcoin blockchain. What are the limitations of Bitcoin? Well, Bitcoin, because it's a legacy technology, it can be quite slow. Depending on when you're doing a transaction, if it's a very busy time and there's a lot of transactions happening on the network, it can also be expensive. In general, right now, I believe a Bitcoin transaction costs somewhere between $1 to $2 per transaction. But if the network is really congested, it can go all the way up to $30, $40, $50 per transaction, which is really insane. And when you compare Bitcoin to, for example, Ethereum, which is a smart contract platform, there's very limited programmability. So with Ethereum, you can make these smart contracts, you can put lots of logic into it, and you can automate lots of things. But with Bitcoin, there's very limited programmability. Now, let's talk about how some of these limitations are solved. One of those solutions is the Lightning Network. And to explain how the Lightning Network works, I'm going to use the example of the pub. Let's say that I go to the pub and I order a beer, and the bartender tells me, your beer is $5 and you need to pay me now in Bitcoin. So every time I transfer money to him, it will take 20-30 minutes of processing time on the Bitcoin network, and I need to pay a transaction fee on top of the price of my beers. If I need to pay 5 or 10 beers in a night, I'm going to wait a long time for all these transactions to process, and I need to pay a lot of transaction fees if I do it in separate transactions. Now, what is the Lightning Network? So if we have the Bitcoin blockchain, and the Bitcoin blockchain, all of the transactions get bundled together in blocks. Those blocks get processed by miners, and those miners take some time to process each block of transaction. Let's say that I don't want to settle my tab 5 times per night, but I just want to settle my bill at the end of the night. And what if I don't only settle my bill at the end of the night, but all of the other people that are in the pub all settle their bill at the exact same time? So what happens? The bartender opens tabs for each of the different people within the pub, and he keeps track. Okay, Mitchell ordered 5 beer, Thomas ordered 4 beer, Rico ordered 3 beer, and at the end of the night at 11 p.m., all of that needs to be paid. That's exactly what the Lightning Network does. So it's an off-chain network where millions of transactions can happen in between blocks of Bitcoin. And then when those transactions get settled, they get posted to the main Bitcoin blockchain, and then everything is updated. So that's equivalent to the analogy of everyone settles their bill at the end of the time. And before the settlement takes place, you just keep track of it on this sidechain. Now, here's another schematic. Let's say that, you have the Bitcoin blockchain, which is just below this dotted line again. So those are these blocks of transactions. And then you have a separate Lightning channel, which is an open channel through which multiple different transactions can happen. And when all of that gets settled, it gets posted to the main Bitcoin blockchain. And how can you become part of the Lightning Network? Well, again, you can buy this same device, a Raspberry Pi. You can even install a screen on it. You can connect it to the internet, install a script, and that will allow you to take part in the Lightning Network. So here, this script, 𝗗𝗶𝘀𝗶𝗺𝗶 Bitcoin full node plus Lightning Network plus Tor. So this allows you to be a participant on the Lightning Network. Yeah, so that's how it works, the Lightning Network. To give you some context, Bitcoin, the Bitcoin blockchain, is able to process 3 to 7 transactions per second. Visa, the payment processing the payment and credit card processing company, can process up to 4,000 transactions per second. So Bitcoin is significantly slower. But through the Lightning Network, so this extra layer on top of Bitcoin, we can call it layer 2, we are actually able to do transactions much faster than Visa. We can do millions of transactions per second. And not that long ago, or actually a few years ago, El Salvador came out with, basically announced that Bitcoin was a legal tender, meaning that Bitcoin was suddenly a legal payment method in everyday life. But El Salvador isn't the richest country in the world. So if people need to pay $1, $2, $3, $4, $5 in transaction fees per transaction, well, it doesn't make sense if you just want to go to the grocery store and buy some milk and you need to pay a $5 transaction fee. So within El Salvador, for example, they're making a lot of use of the Lightning Network to bring down the transaction fees and also the settlement times. Because if you want to buy some milk in the grocery store, you go to the cashier and you need to wait 30 minutes for your Bitcoin to arrive at the cashier, and you need to wait there in the shop. Also, that's not very efficient. So the Lightning Network solves all of that. Now, finally, let's talk about Ordinals. So the nice thing about Bitcoin is divisibility. You can divide Bitcoin into many smaller pieces of Bitcoin. We call those Satoshis. A Satoshi is a 1/100 millionth part of a Bitcoin. So you can divide one Bitcoin into 100 million separate pieces called Satoshis. And Ordinals is the protocol, the Bitcoin protocol, that allows you to inscribe data on the Bitcoin blockchain. This is very similar to NFTs. So in the previous bull market cycle, NFTs were the big thing. So all of these JPEGs and whatever images, videos connected on the blockchain. Basically, the Ordinal protocol, which is a recent update to the Bitcoin network, allows you to do some similar stuff on the Bitcoin blockchain. So what we saw was the emergence of projects like Bitcoin Punks, which is an Ordinal. So the first 10K collection on Bitcoin Ordinals. Bitcoin Punks is the first byte-perfect uploads of the original Ethereum CryptoPunks onto the Bitcoin blockchain using Ordinal theory. So basically what you do is you take a Bitcoin, you divide it into 100 million, you divide it into its smallest component. So you can divide one Bitcoin by 100 million pieces. And then you take that and you inscribe a piece of data, an image or a video on top of that Satoshi. And that allows you to create something like the Bitcoin Punks. So that's like an NFT on top of the Bitcoin blockchain. And in Q4 of last year, we saw actually a lot of activity happening on the Bitcoin blockchain around Ordinals. Suddenly it was a big hype. Many people wanted to buy these Ordinals. So whenever you want to send Ordinals or transact Ordinals, there's activity happening on the Bitcoin network. So miners actually made a lot of money during that time because there's a lot of additional transaction volume happening on the network. All right, so that's it. Now you understand the role of the miners. You understand the blockchain. You understand mining pools. You understand nodes, full nodes, light nodes. You understand the Lightning Network. You understand Ordinals. Now you have a much better picture of how the entire Bitcoin ecosystem works together. Some of the smartest and most motivated, talented people in the world are now working on blockchain. It has attracted venture capitalists, researchers, analysts, Wall Street, academics. They're all now part of the Bitcoin ecosystem. Bitcoin has been created in 2008, 2009, but it is ever evolving. The more people enter the space, the more money flows into the space, the more innovation is happening. Stuff like Ordinals, which is just, in my opinion, a fun gimmick. But stuff like the Lightning Network, which helps Bitcoin to become a lot faster and cheaper, are really groundbreaking, to the point where El Salvador is now able to make Bitcoin a legal tender, and people within the country can very easily, cheaply, and very rapidly transact in Bitcoin. So let me know in the comments below, did you learn anything new from this video? Because if you did, then my mission of this video is completed. Then my whole goal with this video was to give you an ultimate guide to understand the entire Bitcoin ecosystem. No matter if you're deep into crypto or whether you're just starting this journey. If you did enjoy this video and if you did learn something, then do me one quick favor, smash the like button so I know that you got good value out of it. And if you haven't done so yet, also make sure to subscribe to my channel, because I'm going to be posting regular videos just like this one to help you to make sense of everything that's happening within this space and to help you to position yourself for maximum gains. All right. Talk soon. Take care. Have an amazing day. And I'll see you in the next one. Take care.